All right, folks, welcome in to another great episode of I've Got a Theory. I'm your host, Henish, and I'm really excited to have on Tom Paladino, who is a scalar light expert. And you can check out his website at scalarlight.com, SCALAR light.com. Super interesting stuff, Tom. Really excited to have you on. I've kind of just poked my head into this Pandora's box of energy that you've just opened up, but it's been opened up for a long time. People have known about this for 120 plus years, starting back with Nikola Tesla. So tell us what you're doing. Tell me your theory, and let's get this thing going.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Paladino. Thanks for the invite, Henish. What are we going to speak about? Scalar light. What is that? It's not electricity. It's zero-point energy, chi or prana. So I work with scalar light. I've developed scalar light instruments. And with that, I can access a dimension that is not electromagnetic. So there's two energies in the universe. We're going to speak about that other energy, zero-point energy, or what some people call scalar light.
Awesome. And so your theory is, go ahead and fill in the blank.
My theory is that the sun and the stars produce or transmit this scalar energy. We quite have not figured out that there are two energies in the universe. Well, my instrument captures that sunlight, that starlight. And I'm able with this instrument not only to capture, harness that energy, but then to transmit it and to do incredible things with this energy. And again, I have to offer this. There are two energies in the universe. I'm not working with electricity. So what you know about the electromagnetic spectrum does not necessarily apply to this spectrum of scalar energy.
So I've gone down this rabbit hole of force and recently, and I've actually learned that there's four known observable types of force, right? There's gravity, which is elusive and difficult to explain. Electromagnetism. Mm-hmm. There's the strong force and the weak force, which has to do with how particles work. That's the four that we know of. And so now this is kind of a different thing. So if it comes from, let's just keep it at the micro level of just our solar system. So say scalar light is coming from our sun that we're familiar with. It's different than a photon, or it is part of a photon?
Very good. Scalar energy is non-physical. So there's no photon. There is no mass whatsoever. And to put a proper context on this, I believe that all energy initiates in the universe as scalar energy from the sun and the stars, and that electricity and magnetism are a derivative of scalar energy. So if you will, scalar energy is the supreme force, and then those four types of energy that you mentioned, electromagnetic, gravity, strong and weak force, those are subsumed, if you will, under scalar energy. So scalar energy is the first energy, the initial energy of the stars.
Zero-point energy. Okay, so zero-point energy, for the listeners that aren't understanding this, I thought was explained as the energy that kind of keeps a proton and a neutron and electron kind of at bay within an atom, right? That's and you know, it's been described potentially as electromagnetic, but they kind of say, well, maybe not. Maybe it's something different. They don't know what makes the mass of an atom, because we know that most matter is mostly space. It's just the force of those subatomic particles that create the matter.
Let me put it this way. It's believed that the electron can be created or uncreated. In other words, the electron itself is not a fundamental particle. So I believe we do have a fundamental particle, but looking at this strictly from a Newtonian framework, electromagnetic energy really is not the fundamental energy of the universe. It is rather scalar energy, and electrons and protons can be created or uncreated. So they cannot be fundamental either. So we're looking at really a higher level of physics that very few people can really quite grasp yet. Well, it's there. Nikola Tesla ascertained that scalar energy was that non-Hertzian energy. He called it non-Hertzian. He called it sometimes radiant energy. And he always referred to the ether. Now, the ether is very real, but very few people are willing to mention that particle, that fundamental particle, the ether. So you really have to study men like Tesla to understand that finer and that more exquisite model of physics. Tesla understood that. He understood scalar energy quite well.
Well, it was his body of work and the research that he conducted over all those years. Did it disappear or was it preserved somehow?
The day that Nikola Tesla died, the FBI raided his apartment in New York City, and they took everything. They took his notes, they took his instruments. So much of that has been seized by the federal government, and it's never been released. And you have to ask yourself, well, why such an extraordinary effort by the federal government? What was so important about this dying man's laboratory? Um, so to cut to the chase, I believe it's suppressed, and I believe one of the reasons is that this technology is such a game changer. This technology will make obsolete, in many ways, the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, and so I'm not against the idea that corporate interests would prevent advancements in technology, right? We see this happening right now with the reluctance of the fossil fuel industry to give up on that and shift to electrical or renewable energies at the minimum as a step towards a cleaner planet, right? We're seeing that fight currently. And so I know that even in the era of Tesla, there was a big push because the car had just been somewhat recently invented in the early 1900s. And there was a push towards fossil fuels and development and use of this and growing their consumer base. So if someone comes out with an idea like free electricity, guess what? That's not going to work for my business plan. We need to stop that.
Yeah. Those are the impediments that Tesla faced, and to this day, I likewise face those impediments. I've got a great technology, but I can guarantee you, primetime TV is not interested in what I have to say.
Is it because of who sponsors and or advertises for them and their agenda that they want to maintain?
That's part of it, and also on account of the fact that primetime television stations are owned by the cabal. The Illuminati owns these media outlets.
Sure. Okay. So we're saying basically some organized group of people controls what we get to see and hear.
That's it.
What about like wealthy free thinkers, right? And obviously the one that pops into mind is Elon Musk, right? Who's kind of our modern day inventor at the Tesla scale of just recreating everything, right? And he has that kind of mind where he looks at a problem and says, let's solve this. And maybe it's a unique approach. Has he looked into any of this and said, hey, let's do this free energy because that means free charging for my cars?
I've not been approached by Elon Musk or anybody in his organization. That would I'll let you know if that ever happens.
Okay. All right. I'll see if I can connect some dots. Not that I know him, but 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, who knows?
There you go.
Is it 6? Whatever it is. Okay. So tell me about your instruments and the research that you've done.
I was fortunate enough that I met the wife of an inventor. Galen Hieronymus is the man I'm referring to, an American pioneer. He developed scalar energy instruments back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. Well, by the time I came on the scene in 1993, he was deceased, but his wife survived. Her name's Sarah Hieronymus. And in many ways, she gave me these instruments and she gave me his notes because she was an octogenarian. She knew that her time was limited. And she more or less passed on this tradition to me, this scalar energy tradition. So it really fell into my lap. It was quite providential. This is God's design. So I did not have to start, so to speak, from scratch. So I carry on, in theory, the work of Tesla, and in practice, the work of Hieronymus. Those are the two luminaries that I will cite. Long story short, I am continuing on with their research. Now, this is really a narrow field still because it's so poorly understood. And most of the people who want to get into this, there's really no starting point because there's no instrument that you can work with. So long story short, I'm one of the few scalar energy researchers in the world.
Okay, so have you done experiments that are measurable, that are been peer reviewed, et cetera? Like how does the research hold up objectively?
No. Why? Because I'm not working with electromagnetic energy.
But you have something that measures this, you said, right? You have some kind of device that indicates scalar light.
A scalar energy instrument can measure scalar energy.
Okay.
But you cannot use an electromagnetic instrument to measure the results or measure this energy. In other words, if scalar energy is an apple, electromagnetic energy is an orange. So there has been no outside party that can either substantiate or debunk my work on account of the fact that there's no measuring rod, so to speak. There's no way to use our understanding of electromagnetic energy and compare it or use that as the litmus test for scalar energy. So
Sure.
what am I?
But with your own instruments, if you're measuring scalar energy and that's what it does it do so with some level of precision that could be used to say, yes, it's high, low, medium, something?
Yes, yes, it is. It's very precise. I conducted an experiment a few years back in which a group had a protozoan in a petri dish. And this group sent me a photograph of that petri dish. And I was able to break down the protozoan in that petri dish at a distance. Now, you can't explain that action at a distance. You can't explain that according to electromagnetics, because electromagnetics does not make that connection between two different points. In a scalar energy paradigm, everything is one point. So really the petri dish was connected to my instrument. Now that I know that sounds counterintuitive, but that's how you have to think about this other dimension. It's not electromagnetic in character.
Well, I saw some of the pictures of your equipments and the research and the studies that you've done, and kind of just show a picture of disease, and then you're apparently that's how the machine works to
Yes.
target it and do its work.
Yes. Now this is what's so phenomenal. All I need is, as you mentioned, pictures. I appropriately, they're magnified photographs. I take a magnified photograph of a microbe and I place it inside my instrument, and my instrument interprets the photograph. I don't do any interpretation. So whatever I place within this environment, the instrument will automatically interpret, decode, understand, and in so doing, we can eradicate that signal of disease. We can eradicate that signal of a microbe. It's an entirely new science.
And I don't know if my face shows it, but that's hard to believe.
I know.
It's hard to believe, one. And two, I feel like you could do some kind of study, right? They had the prayer study where you do a double blind and the researcher doesn't know, the patients don't know. And
Yes.
some people get prayed for and some people don't.
Yes.
And I think the results proved that the people that got prayed for did get better.
I have many testimonials, but they're one-on-one testimonies. They're individual testimonies. Now,
couldn't you do a study at a scale, like 100 people?
I would love to, but I don't have 100 people that have stepped forward. Most people are rather shy. They don't want to participate in such a study. Now, really, to make this a valid study, I would have to step aside and let others perform this study.
Sure.
Because some people might say, "Well, Tom, you skewed the numbers or you skewed the results." So it has.
It's not. Well, I mean, at a certain point, that you create more of these instruments and you let other people recreate your results.
Correct. So
are these machines hard to make?
Oh, very difficult.
Okay.
Very, very difficult. So just to finish this, a disinterested party, so to speak, would have to conduct this study.
Sure. Yeah, it's got to be objective. Hey, I'm just putting this together and see if it works.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if the U.S. is stuck in its ways, there's got to be places in the world where they're saying, hey, I'm thinking, the Middle East for one, we're about to run out of oil in XYZ countries, right? They already did in Bahrain and they're starting to in other countries. We need to figure out other ways for energy, for business, for commerce. Let's put a couple $1 billion into Tom's Scalar Energy and see if we can make something happen and rock the world. Or is the CIA coming in and putting a squash on that behind the scenes?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I know for a fact that the CIA knows about my work. So we're just at that hump stage right now, where somebody has to make a decision whether they're going to help me or try and stop me in the future. Okay. Because the word is getting out.
Yeah, I mean it's getting out. I mean, because it's like when they're saying, "Oh, don't use CRISPR to do gene editing on humans." Got it. Maybe that works in the U.S., but guess what? In Southeast Asia and China, they're still probably doing gene editing on humans, right? So you can tell someone not to do something, but someplace in the world, they're like, "I'm going to figure that out and grow a person that glows in the dark. I don't care." Yeah. Right. And so, so is it worth? And I get this is cool that you're on my show and maybe we can get the word out, but I don't know if this gets translated into Mandarin because I'm like, someone in China is going to have $1 billion for you to say, let's do this. And we're going to become the world's largest consumer and user of electric vehicles / electronic technology. We got pollution problems. We can't keep burning stuff and putting into our air because,
Right.
admittedly, it doesn't just affect poor people, right? Even if you're wealthy
But
in China, you're getting screwed by
consider
the
what I'm
pollution.
saying. If I have this instrument that controls star energy, I have a miniature star. What
Yeah.
does that mean? Stars are free energy, infinite energy, clean energy. Put all that together. That's the future. There is no carbon footprint. This is clean, perfect energy.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. And that's where we'd have to go to. And it seems very possible, right? So I wouldn't discredit this by any means. And I get why it would be threatening to traditional energy industries. But at a certain point, you got to move forward. You can't keep looking back and digging stuff out of the ground to burn as our only solution for energy. It doesn't make sense.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, how much more suffering? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't. If the model is broke, the model is broke. The world economy is not doing well. We need a new technology. This is it.
So, how many people do you think you have treated with this, and what's the scope and breadth of treatments available for this? Is it, could you treat your dog? How about racehorses? You said it kills germs.
I'm
Uh,
going to hold up a collage. I
okay.
work with collages around the world. This is a collage that I just printed off of Google. Anyway,
Okay.
I want to demonstrate. On any given day, I receive 20, 30, 40,000 photographs of people around the world.
Okay.
And we have photo uploaders in which people can just send in photographs. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we've worked with at least 200, 300 million people around the world
Well.
because we have Christian missionaries throughout Africa and Asia that are sending us photographs on a daily basis.
Okay.
Okay. So what does that mean? That means many people are seeing the benefits. Now, again, it's hard to make a cause and effect connection, but I'll leave you at this. The technique that I have perfected, we can break down a microbe. Scalar energy will break down the molecular bonds of a microbe. Now, the before and after, people had herpes before the session. After our session, they get a diagnostic test. They no longer have any sign of herpes virus.
This seems measurable. This seems like you should be able to document this and say, here it is, it works. We don't need to buy antibiotics anymore.
I have many test results, but again, Henish, you cannot make the connection between a remote scalar energy instrument and somebody in Africa. Okay, that's a stretch. I believe I can make that theoretical connection, but a lot of people have that difficulty. That, again, when I work with photographs of people, there's no in-person session. Everything that I do is by way of a person's photograph or the photograph of an animal. And that's the real catch here. People do not understand that this is a different science.
It seems like you could set up an experiment that would be measurable. You take two machines, one works, the other one doesn't, and you
Right.
treat different populations of people,
Right.
and you see if there is a significance in the one
Very
that
good.
the machine that works, and say, okay, yeah, we didn't know which machine it was, but this population of the test got better, and then this one didn't. So is there a correlation? Probably.
No.
Now we got evidence.
Let me give you this casual test or this beta test, if you will. Everybody that we've worked with in a African village feels better, and those people no longer have microbial infection. Those who chose not to take the test, those people still have their microbes. They still have their bacterial and viral infections. So that in and of itself is a loose beta test, if you will, but it proves that for some reason the people who are under the scalar session feel better, and it can show by their diagnostic test.
How does the machine interpret the picture and find the person?
Because light is intelligence. And when I have, this is my photograph. When I place my photograph in the instrument simply looks at my light signature. Okay, again, this is not electromagnetic in character. So my body on film, so to speak, on a photograph carries my soul, mind, and body. That's my scalar energy signature. And this is what's unique about scalar energy. I don't care if it's a person, an animal, a plant, or an object. Everything has a signal, a signature. So I could take a photograph of your car and treat your car with scalar energy at a distance.
Treat it for what?
I could cleanse it of germs.
Hmm. Have you tried this with COVID yet?
Yes.
And
Yes. I will say that everybody during the pandemic that I've worked with, everybody's healthy. Everybody's healthy. Uh, uh, everybody who's been a subscriber during this pandemic, nobody has died.
can you just do this at a whole level? Like take a close-up picture of the coronavirus ball with the little crowns coming out of it and say, I'm just going to kill all the coronavirus on the planet.
You have to then direct it. You have to direct it. That's the intelligence, that's the information, the coronavirus. But you have to direct it, and you can direct it to a group of people, or you could direct it to even animals. But you need a photograph on the other end to direct it to. So a photograph of COVID-19, as the intelligence needs a receiver, which are people or animals that are going to receive that intelligence. So to cut to the chase, if I received a million photographs a day, I could work with those million photographs a day with Scalar Energy, but it has to be a photograph of a person or a photograph of an animal. The instrument does what you tell it to do.
So eventually you got to run across some rich people that say, hey, this was awesome. It was great. I can't wait to have everyone in my family and my network at my companies use your services. Are you getting there?
Yes, we are. There's one corporation that's been vigilant. They want their entire staff under my care during COVID-19. And I'm happy to report that hundreds of people in this corporation are healthy. Nobody has succumbed to COVID. Nobody.
These are bold claims. It seems useful. What was some of your recent roadblocks that you've had for mass adoption? Or are you getting kind of pushback? Are there creepy vans parked out in your street? What's happening?
I know the governments around the world are looking at this by now, and they have to make a decision. And the decision is, are we going to help the people with this technology, or are we going to try and suppress Tom's technology, Tom's work, because it affects our pocketbook? That's where it's going to boil down to. There are good and evil people in the world. There are good and evil governments in the world. And we're getting to that point that we're going to see this confrontation.
Yeah, you just need someone like Google on your side and say, hey, sign up for our Scalar Light subscription plan. It's only $10 on your Gmail account per month. Yes. And we'll give you Scalar Energy. We'll record you through your computer camera and send you healing powers, right? Yeah. And you can get them on a subscription service. Everyone wants a subscription service.
Yeah. And that's where we're going with this. And that's, as a Christian, that's one of my goals, is to be able to provide free sessions, free healing, free treatments for everybody in the world. Again, all it takes is a photograph. That's pretty simple. It's pretty laborious to build a hospital and then to staff that hospital, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot easier to take a photograph and just work with people's photographs.
What about the jobs, Tom? That's the thing. People need jobs. That's what they need to build hospitals and things like that. I'm just making a joke, obviously, but like that's part of the reason.
Right? That's a good joke, but I'm gonna add to that. Very good. This new technology will free mankind, so we don't have to work 40 hours a week, and it will create new industries. For instance, when the horse and buggy went out, you don't drive a horse and buggy, and I don't drive a horse and buggy. Well, that was the end of an era, the horse and buggy. But sure. Now we have other means of transportation that are far more affordable, that are far more attractive than the horse and buggy.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, you create new jobs and you get rid of the old ones. I don't want to see a planet where we don't have anything to do, because then people just troll the internet. And then the worst comes out. We need to get people back to like digging dirt and planting plants or something. Because, idle hands are the devil's playground or something like that, right? I mean, so like, yeah, bored people with no jobs. We just had a Zoom attack on a conference call that I had the other day. I'm like, this guy's got nothing better to do than just bomb our Zoom meeting. Like, get a job. I get it. The unemployment's really good right now, and then you hear that same issue with a lot of the workforce, right? People that work at restaurants and stuff don't want to go back and work at restaurants because unemployment's so good. Yeah. That why would they go to work when the government just gives them money every week? So anyways, it's on a different tangent. So let's not push the route of don't have to work anymore. How about we just don't push for wasting the planet's resources that then cause pollution, right? Because you can go for a hike or dig up the ground or plant plants or do labor or work that's effective and non-polluting. Ideally, that'd be my goal, right? But I think that you're onto something, and I think that we do need to figure out how to turn scalar light not just for healing people, right? Because you're saying there's lots of other benefits, right? When I was reading into the Tesla stuff, he developed weapons, right? He developed a defense shield, right? He's got all these things, at least theoretically, if not in practicality, because he worked on this for over 20 to 30 years, right? And it was kind of hidden. And when you read about this, you would think the academics in the world say, let's dig up those treasure troves. We need Freedom of Information Act to release those records. They're 60 years old now, or 80 years old at this point.
Right, right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. What Tesla achieved, if we would have listened to him and incorporated his inventions, we would not be here today. You and I would have a much more pleasurable lifestyle. But the powers that be stood in the way. These nefarious forces did not want this technology. It's a threat to the elite. This is a threat to the power and money of the elite.
It'll eventually have to surface, right? I mean, eventually someone says, crap, the train industries are going downhill. We need to jump on highways and trucking and shipping or whatever it is, and meanwhile, trains are doing pretty good, I suppose. But you know what I'm getting at. There's an example of that where it doesn't make as much sense. But 0-point energy, scalar light, these things that we don't understand very well yet need to be researched further, right? We spend billions of dollars trying to figure out how to blow each other up, but we don't spend nearly as much money trying to figure out how we can do so more efficiently without developing nuclear warheads and conventional warheads and other things that go kaboom, as opposed to saying, hey, let's figure out how to get this energy, because half the time we're battling over other people's oil anyways.
Right. It's a never-ending proposition, isn't it? It's futile. It's futile. We need a new model. The model is broken in this world. That's why there's so much poverty, so much hardship. That's why we go to war over oil. We need a new model.
So take a look at your crystal ball. How does this shift over the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Over the next 5 years, people will realize that what I've discovered is the easy way to break down the molecular bonds of microbes, germs. And over the next 5 years, I would say the greater majority of people in the world, say with herpes and HIV, will no longer have herpes and HIV.
Okay.
And after that will be, if you will, the rally cry. And we'll eventually then start developing anti-gravity scalar energy instruments. We'll eventually use scalar energy to power buildings, etc. Once this has some momentum, and once this becomes a household word, then nothing will stop it.
Is it? There's so many implications for this, right? And
it's such a game changer.
Yeah, I'm a sci-fi reader myself. I love crushing sci-fi books, but like planetary travel, interplanetary travel, drones, right? It's not just that. Like the Tesla with AC, I remember hearing a long time ago, and it wasn't just scalar light. He had devised ways to do wireless energy,
right,
80 years ago.
That was scalar. Now, very good. Tesla began his career as an AC engineer. He was brilliant. He's the father of AC engineering. But he ended his career with scalar energy. If you look at his inventions later on in his life, they were all non-Hertzian, no frequency. They were all wireless. Okay, you don't need wires to carry scalar energy. You need wires to carry AC electricity. So Tesla graduated, and when he was in Colorado Springs in 1899 conducting experiments, he said this energy is non-Hertzian, meaning it doesn't have a frequency. And he was able to harness, if you will, scalar energy by his tower in Colorado Springs in 1899. He was no longer interested in AC electricity thereafter.
Yeah. It seems too bad that they weren't able to disseminate some of this information and share it, and so they can recreate it and play with it and experiment. It's so odd that repression of information is an oft used tactic, yes, right? But we saw with nuclear proliferation, maybe that was intended. Maybe that spy that was here that went and shared all the nuclear secrets to Russia was intended so we could have a Cold War, so we could build up the arms race and build up a huge defense industry, right? It's possible, right? I mean, when you talk about the cabal and the Illuminati and stuff like that, that seems like goals of theirs to say, let's spend more money to build bombs and tanks and missiles and stuff like that, and haven't fight someone on the other side of the planet that probably wants the same thing as us, but make them do it too. And everyone's building these things.
Yeah, that's a point to be taken. Sure.
Wow. I could spend hours and hours talking to you about this. I'm sure you've got people to heal and research to do. But thank you so much for spending some time with us. And you're offering some services on your website itself, right? Can you tell us what you can do for people?
People visit the website scalarlight.com. Anybody in the world can upload their photograph. Remember, we work with you by way of a photograph only. So send in your photograph of family members and pets. Scalarlight.com. There's a free trial, 15-day free trial for everybody in the world. Try it. You'll see how you feel better and how this improves your mental, physical, spiritual health.
Are there things that it can't help with? Like, can it help with like skin issues or back pain or toenail fungus?
It really, it's hard to say. Sometimes we see that the miracle in the energy can do things that I myself I'm surprised at. So just try it. It's a divine energy. Sign up for the 15-day free trial. See how you feel.
So I'm going to send you a picture of me. I'm not going to tell you what's wrong, right. And then maybe you can grow my hair back or something.
That's a good point. Not yet. But in the future,
I have to tell you what's wrong with me too, so you can figure out, like, I have to put like my issues down.
No, and again, I don't diagnose. This is not Western medicine. This is an entirely new way. It's the energy does all the interpretation.
So, but if I had herpes, it would be killed. But if I don't, maybe it takes care of something else that's a problem. I got like tummy aches or something.
Correct. The instrument does the work. I don't do the work.
And then how do you assess whether it's working or not? Do you get feedback from someone like, okay, it's a week later and all of a sudden,
if you look at our website, we have 4,000 testimonies. That's a pretty good sign that it's working.
Got it. Okay. Tom, hey, that was really interesting. Thanks for spending some time with me on it. Please check out his website at scalarlight.com. Please research Nikola Tesla's efforts into this and Tom Paladino's efforts into this, because this needs some attention. Share it with your rich friends. And if someone knows Elon Musk, get him on this thing, because he should be interested, I would think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, please like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching another great episode of I've Got a Theory. I'm your host, Henish Polkle. Catch you next time. Positive.